So as the world commemorates International Women's Day, let's zoom in on South Africa and look at the challenges around gender parity with Dr. Dionita Damans, academic and labor expert at Boston City campus. Thank you very much for joining us. So what is it that we actually need to keep top of mind as we have this conversation around gender parity in South Africa? How do we fare as comparison maybe to the rest of the continent or the rest of the world? Okay, unfortunately, Dr. Damans is not able to hear us. We're going to re-establish that connection and hopefully give you her perspective as we celebrate International Women's Day. For now, though, let's stay in Southern Africa and tell you about a gay couple scoring a partial victory in Namibia's Supreme Court yesterday. This comes after the court ruled that the government had discriminated against them when it rejected the residency application of one of the two, who's a Mexican-born. The court said that a paternity test is not needed to prove that Yano Lu Delgado is the son of a Namibian and his Mexican husband. The Home Affairs Ministry has been ordered to pay the couple's costs and issued national documents. Mozambique has recorded 0 coronavirus-related deaths or infections in the past 24-hour period. This is the first time the country has had no positive infections since the outbreak of the disease in the country 2 years ago. Officials have attributed these 0 cases to a massive vaccination campaign and adherence to restrictions, including the wearing of masks, hand washing and social distancing. Over 37% of the population is currently fully vaccinated. In North Africa, Libya's parliament has rejected what it calls interference in its operations. The speaker made the remarks after the UN offered to host talks between rival factions. The UN made the offer in a push for the long-delayed elections to be held. Libya's parliament appointed a new premier in a bid to oust the head of the unity government, Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dbeibah, who has vowed only to hand over power to an elected administration. At least 4 people died and 30 others have been left injured when a 4-story building collapsed in Ivory Coast's economic hub of Abidjan. Despite rescuers' efforts, witnesses say some people are still trapped in the rubble.
At least 4 people, including 2 children, have died after an apartment block in Ivory Coast's commercial capital Abidjan collapsed, the fire brigade said on Monday. They were called to the 5-story building in Kokodi neighborhood shortly after midnight. Armed with torches, rescuers have been searching through mounds of broken concrete. 30 people have been brought out alive, including a baby. But for some, the wait goes on. Ula Amon Williams, who lived on the 3rd floor, says his daughter is still inside. He says he has faith she will be found. The fire brigade said 13 have been taken to hospital. The number of people in the building when it collapsed was not immediately clear. The disaster comes a week after several were killed in another building collapse in a different part of the city. Prime Minister Patrick Ashi has visited the site and promised an investigation.
Right, let's continue to mark International Women's Day, and we zoom in on South Africa and take a look at the challenges around gender parity with Dr. Laura Fisher. She's with Boston City campus. Dr. Fisher, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. So what do we need to understand about this conversation when we take a look at South Africa in relation to the rest of the continent or the world? Dr. Fisher, are you with us?
I am. Sorry, the sound has come in and out a little bit.
No worries.
Thank you for the warm welcome.
I'm not sure if you heard my question, but in terms of, when we talk about gender parity, comparing South Africa to the rest of the continent and the world, how are we faring?
Well, I think in some ways we're faring okay. And in other ways we're faring poorly. But first of all, to start out with some of the positive, in that in South Africa we have some of the most bright, beautiful, strong women in the world, in my opinion, and it might be slightly biased. So I think it's a very significant day to commemorate International Women's Day here in South Africa.
Absolutely.
And South African women have been so instrumental in the growth of our economy because of their incredible ability to, despite everything, to raise happy, healthy children who can contribute to a brighter and better future. And when I cast my mind forward, I just imagine a world that is free of bias and stereotype and discrimination. And I think that in South Africa we have a tremendous amount of positivity and ability to believe that the world is going into a positive future, despite the very real hardship that we often face.
Dr. Fisher, just for the purpose of time, I'm so sorry to come in there as we wrap up the conversation. Today, receiving a number of invitations as it's International Women's Day and the panelists are all women. Can we afford to continue this conversation of gender parity, gender inequality, women's rights without men?
Sure. No, we absolutely need women and men to continue the conversation. If we want to look at equity and gender parity, then we would need both parties to be involved. I think that gender discrimination remains a problem in various settings in South Africa. And obviously, coming from Boston City campus, we're particularly focused on education and want to educate both men and women. But obviously today I'll call out for educating women in particular into occupations and occupations particularly that are in demand. And so the global conversation must continue, and the gender gap must be closed, and it can't be closed unless we significantly increase the number of women and young girls in training and education. And so that's the role that we play.
It hurts me to do this, but thank you very much for your time. Unfortunately, we've desperately run out of time. She's head of institutional advancement at Boston City campus. Thank you for indulging us.